Mr. Borough President. Thank you, Congressman. My name is Anthony Ciora. I'm the Hurricane Sandy Recovery Program Manager for the Army Corps of Engineers New York District. And on behalf of our District Commander, Colonel Thomas Asbury, I would like to thank the Congressman and the Borough President. Again, that's the inundation map for this area from Hurricane Sandy. You can see how widespread the flooding and damages were. So, talking about construction, all of the approvals that are necessary are in place. The Congressman mentioned the final hurdle that was enacted through legislation earlier this calendar year. The feasibility report was approved by the Secretary of the Army back in December 2016. I mentioned the federal cost share funds that are available under the Disaster Relief Appropriations Act, Public Law 113-2. The initial construction, which is cost share, 35% with the non-federal partners at the state and city of New York. Those funds are also appropriated and in place. So all of the funding needed to build this $650 million project is available, and we are ready to proceed. We'll get to that. So, estimated total project cost, $615 million. Again, $400 million federal, $215 non-federal, and that non-federal share includes $91 million in estimated real estate acquisitions, which the city will be performing in order to get the project constructed. Now, the Congressman mentioned one thing about politics. I can tell you, I have worked with 5 of your predecessors, sir, since the 1990s. You probably even know the names of them, because I know you look at that tree of your seat. Whether they were Democrats, Republicans, no matter what their politics were, certainly they understood that flooding and the associated damages and threat to life and property is not a partisan issue. They did what they could to help advance the study. There were times when we received no funding and had to stop work for a year or more and then pick it up again. I'm happy to announce that those days are behind us. We have all the funding needed to move to construction, and we're here today to tell you about what you can expect as far as the schedule, when we expect to start, and the best information we have available to you this evening. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the project manager, Frank Verba.
All right, thank you. So what we'll do today is we'll kind of go through how we foresee breaking out the construction of the project. But just a kind of quick summary again. Once the report was approved in 2016, that allowed us to actually start the plans and specifications, the design phase for the project in 2017. And as Anthony said, we did sign the project partnership agreement, binding the project moving forward in February of this year between the Corps, the state, and the city of New York. Now, over these last 2 years, there's been a lot of work that's been going on behind the scenes, a lot of engineering and environmental work necessary to get the data that you need to actually get the construction contracts set up. And here's a listing of all the items that we've been doing: surveys and mapping, utility investigations, all the environmental wetland delineations, biological monitoring, tree surveys. We've been out in the field doing geotechnical subsurface borings, hazardous material assessments, as well as cultural resource investigations. And then internally, we've been doing a lot of engineering work, including physical modeling and a lot of the interior drainage modeling that's necessary to get the design set so that we know how to move into construction. Next slide. And this is just an example. Again, geotechnical borings on the right. People have to remember, you're talking about a 5-mile reach, so we were out there collecting as much data as humanly possible here. We're still in the process of collecting data, which will help us get the design levels complete. Physical models were actually completed, trying to maximize the design, minimize the amount of overtopping, the amount of ocean water that can get over this project once it is constructed. All right, so obviously we do have an authorized plan, and the goal here is this is going to be your first line of defense against the severe coastal storm surge flooding event. It's basically designed at the heights that we're constructing to an approximate 300-year flood event, which actually is a little bit larger than what happened during Sandy.
What is the height?
We'll get to that. So, following the generic lineup of the project, you can see following the coastline from Fort Wadsworth, all the way through Miller Field, through Newark, all the way into Oakland is going to be the buried seawall structure, large rock structure that'll basically give you that protection from the ocean. At the Oakwood Beach treatment plant, we have a flood wall which will transition around the perimeter of that area, and then a levee structure which runs inland up towards Highland Boulevard. That gives you that solid barrier against the ocean storm surge. On the interior, we have natural storage and excavated ponds. Those areas will be able to hold water during an event and basically be able to relieve water once the event is passed. So go to the next slide. So while we're doing all this design efforts, what we wanted to do, and specifically on the interior areas, and focusing on South Beach, New Creek, and in Oakwood Beach, in the open areas where we're going to do natural storage and excavation for the ponding areas, we are starting a site preparation activity for Phragmite control. Some people may be familiar with this because the city has been doing this in some of these areas as well. The objective here is to basically cut down, start mowing those large Phragmite weeds that grow out there. With spraying in the summer, there'll be multiple seasons, and the objective here is to start getting that growth out of the way so that when the construction events actually start happening, it'll be a lot clearer to complete the construction. The new plantings that we'll be putting into the area will have a better chance of survival. So this is going to be the first field work that everybody sees. We expect to start next month, in the next couple of weeks in December. Obviously the weather will have a play on this, but the goal again will be through South Beach, New Creek, Oakwood, getting rid of all that Phragmites, multiple seasons. Next slide. So now we'll go through how we're going to break out the actual construction of the project. So the first contract, again, a project this size cannot be constructed all at once. It has to be broken out into different construction contracts. And the objective is we tried to set this up so that individual contracts would have space for contractors' actual work, while other contractors would have room on their portion of the project as well. So first contract, if you go to South Beach, this is what we call Interior Drainage Area E. We're looking to start, that should be the first contract for the project, and we're looking to start late next year in 2020. Next slide. So the area that it bounds is, I think people are familiar, Father Capodanno and the Sand Lane area, that open plot of property. The objective here is to basically create a ponding open storage area for interior drainage. Next slide. All right, here you can kind of see just schematically what the area will look like. We'll take that open space, create that new grading to hold the storage. It'll be an excavated pond, again, roughly 30 plus acres. You'll be excavating about 100,000 cubic yards. The goal here, again, is this ponding area will be dry on a regular basis. It'll basically be able to hold water during large stormwater events. Once those events pass, that water will drain out. So more often than not, this will be a dry area. The ponding will include two drainage structures that'll tie into the existing Sand Lane outfall, which already gets water out from the interior into the ocean. There'll also be another connection into the Quintard Street outfall. Once we have the excavated pond, the entire area is going to be replanted and reseeded with native wetland vegetation. And that goes back to what we're trying to do, get rid of the Phragmites, get the excavation going, and then replant with new wetland vegetation. Next slide kind of gives you just a close-up of where the interior inlets are going to be for the drainage structure, one running down under Quincy to tie into Sand Lane, and one running under Father Capodanno, again, same thing, connecting into Sand Lane. All right, so that was first contract, late 2020, Interior Drainage Area E in South Beach, again, that natural storage. Contract 2, if you swing all the way out to Oakwood Beach at the wastewater treatment plant. This is a contract that we're looking to award in 2021. Next slide. So the objective here is that this is where the structure has to basically run the perimeter of the already existing treatment plant here. So the plan here is to use a concrete flood wall section for this. Next slide. All right, it's about 1,800 feet. It'll basically go around the perimeter of the treatment plant. It's mostly a pile-supported concrete flood wall that'll run the coastline and up the creek area. And then as you reach the more northern part, it'll be a sheet pile bulkhead with concrete cap. Important to note here is obviously you're at the treatment plant. There's significant utility and sanitary line that run in the area. So that's a lot of our effort right now is making sure we understand where all these pipes are, because they all have to be accounted for in the project. Next slide. All right, again, just generic schematics of what the flood wall would look like. There are sections at the flood wall which will be facing the creek. Again, one section is a steel sheet pile. Elevation plus 17.4 NAVD 88. Again, roughly this wall will range. The terrain in this area is up and down, so you could get heights of 12 feet. You can get heights where it already runs very close to the ground. It just depends on where you are. As you move closer towards the ocean, you get the pile-supported concrete wall, and you can see the elevation jumps to plus 19.4. Next slide. So, and then facing the ocean, you get the same structure, the pile-supported concrete wall at elevation 19.4. Again, roughly in this area, on average, it's going to look like a 10 to 12 foot structure. Some of these pictures below, you can see these are actual photos from another project. This is the Port Monmouth, New Jersey project, flood wall. I kind of chose these because it does give you a feel for what the structure will look like. It also shows that you can provide texture to the wall to make it a little more aesthetic. You can pick colors that can blend into the area a lot better. So it gives you a good example of when this flood wall will look like. But again, this will be just the structure strictly around the boundary of the treatment plant. All right, so we started in South Beach with the interior ponding. We went to Oakwood Beach with the flood wall around the treatment plant. Now you move back to the middle into the New Creek area. Again, this is another contract that we're looking to award in 2021. Next slide. All right, this is the area, the New Creek area. I think people should be familiar with this. This, again, is open space. We're looking to create ponding and storage in this area. This is basically the area that runs from Island Boulevard all the way down to Fort Capitano. Now, this is an interesting case because we actually have multiple efforts going on at the same time. The City of New York is currently in construction and has plans to continue construction for the Blue Belt portions of the project. So what we've done here is we've coordinated with the city. They will continue their portions of the construction that they're going to be doing, and we will take care of the remaining ponds as well. At the end of the day, we'll all meet and basically all ponds will be used for the project. So if you go to the next slide. For the city's portion of the Blue Belt, it's the top portions that you see in the gray. Last Chance Pond, that's already under construction, and I know they're aiming for completion in 2021. Moving down, Pond 7, between Highland and Mason, that contract is going to come online in 2020. Pond 4, next pond, Mason and Olympia Boulevard, they're actually expecting to start construction by the end of this year. And then Midland Pond, the area of Midland and Lincoln, that would come online in 2022. So again, the city will continue with their efforts and continue to drive those portions of the ponds towards construction. Next slide. The bottom three slides in pink, those are all the ponds that are below Olympia Boulevard, will be the ones that the Corps will construct. We call them ponds 1, 2, 3. Again, a rough approximation, they're about 40 acres. We'll be excavating about 170,000 cubic yards. Same concept as Area E. Dry on a regular basis, but be able to store water during high-level events. Same concept, but this will be an area where we're trying to get rid of the Phragmite growth, and once we get the excavation completed, we'll be replanting and reseeding with native wetland vegetation. All right, so ponding in South Beach, flood wall at the treatment plant, ponding in the New Creek area. Now we go to contract 4, again, 2021, so you start to see that most of these contracts come online in the 2021 a year. But this fourth contract, now we basically from the top of the wastewater treatment plant, where the flood wall contract ended, we'll begin the levee structure that will run parallel to Great Hills Park and run up into Highland Boulevard. And there'll be a road closure gate on Highland Boulevard as well as a tide gate. And we'll see some of the details here. All right, so basically that's the aerial, and like we talked about, the flood wall will go around the perimeter of the treatment plant. From that point on, we will construct a levee that'll work its way up, basically following the edge of the Great Hills Park. If you see, let's go to the next slide. All right, this is just kind of turned over, you get the feel. You see the green is where at the treatment plant where the flood wall would end. The levee structure then starts at that point. It's in the blue. Levee structure is basically earthen levee, compacted. That structure will have to cross the existing creek. That's a tide gate will be constructed there. Behind that tide gate, that open area, which we call interior drainage area A, this is a little different. It just has this area will not be excavated. It'll just stay as open space. Then the levee continues all the way towards Highland Boulevard. Now to tie off into high ground, you need to get across Highland Boulevard, so that's why we have come up with the roller gate that will need to be installed on Highland. If you go to the next slide. All right, so just quick summary. Again, levee from Highland Boulevard down to the treatment plant. It's about 3,400 feet, earthen levee. It ties into the flood wall contract. It will have an access ramp because that way you'll be able to do operation and maintenance. You'll be able to access that and be able to get down to the tide gate and the other structures that are on it. The tide gate is on Oakwood Creek. And again, the objective there is to just maintain the existing tidal system. So again, it'll be open on a regular basis. During events, it would close and basically act as that barrier. We talked about the open storage that's behind it. It's just going to be open space. It's about 17 acres. And then the roller closure gate. Again, you need to cross Highland Boulevard to basically get to the high ground on the other side. So the construction will consist of a 100-foot long roller gate structure. It will appear about 4 foot high when you're standing on the street. It will cross Highland Boulevard, basically between Buffalo Street and Curry Avenue. It'll always be an open gate. Only during large storm events would it need to be closed. And it needs to be closed because obviously that is where water could flank the project, so that area is vulnerable. If you go to the next slide. Correct. And then the levee ties into high ground on the other portion of Highland. So if you go to the next slide. I know it's tough to see here, but it just gives you a schematic of a typical levee. And again, we're reaching plus 16.9 feet NAVD 88. The picture on the right is just an example of that is an existing levee. It's from the Bound Brook, New Jersey project. So basically, it does show you, this is a project, this is actually during a storm event. You can see the water on the other side, and the levee is basically holding that back from infiltrating that entire area. So the levee on our end will be a little bit different. It will have a top, like we said, so that maintenance vehicles can get onto it. But basically, it will look in that with that style of the grass and the mound structure. Next slide. We talked about the roller gate. Again, it will have to cross and be closed on Highland Boulevard only during large-scale events. Again, some of the photos on the bottom are actual roller gates from a different project. These are from Port Monmouth as well. You can see how the roller gate sits in its housing basically, but on a regular basis. Only during events would it be closed. If you go to the next slide, it gives you another example. Same thing, this is also from Bound Brook, New Jersey. Basically, this is what the structure will look like. Like I said, the gate hides behind its structure, and then it'll roll out and close and create that barrier from any large event. Okay, so summarizing again, South Beach, interior drainage, New Creek, interior drainage ponding, the flood wall around the treatment plant, the levee structure that runs up towards Highland Boulevard and includes the tide gate and the roller gate. All right, another contract, and now we move to the ocean portion of the project. Again, in 2021, this is the first portion of the buried seawall, running from Oakwood Beach all the way through Miller Field. Along with the buried seawall, it also includes another interior drainage pond area, which we'll go through. Fronting the wall, the buried seawall, will be a new tidal wetlands that we're going to be constructing. And again, this is also a contract that's coming in 2021. All right, this basically is just a rough schematic. Again, in Oakwood, it's tying into the flood wall contract that we just talked about. It'll run basically following the coastline mostly through Cedar Grove, through Newdorf Beach, through Miller Field, with the interior drainage behind that. Next slide. All right, so this structure, like we said, this is a cleaner view, runs the length of that through Miller Field. Some other portions of this project there are existing outfalls, the Newdorf outfall, for example, that already exist in the project area. Those will have constructed chamber gates. Basically, the idea here is that during an event, the structure, the seawall, will provide that barrier against the ocean, but those outfalls are opening, so during events, those outfalls will be closed. Again, same concept as a tide gate, blocking that water from coming in, and after the event passes, everything opens back up and is able to drain out naturally. Also along the line of protection, you can see in the open section, near the Kissam Avenue area, that's where the creek again comes into the interior drainage. There'll be two tide gate structures that will be constructed, and the objective there is to get water, allow water to get out. All right, so we kind of touched really quickly, but so this contract from Oakwood to Miller Field includes the buried seawall, and on top of the buried seawall is going to be a promenade section. Basically, the top of the structure will have a 17-foot concrete walkway that can be used for access and other purposes. The two tide gates on the creek, all the stormwater outfall gates will be installed. There will be an excavated pond, what we call Area B, interior drainage Area B, as well as other open space storage areas, and we'll look at the map there. We talked about the tidal wetlands that will be constructed. Once we get into Miller Field, there will be some cultural mitigation that's going to be required. The fire tower we'll touch on very shortly, and there is the memorial that will need to be relocated. And just a note, the existing tide gate that's already in Oakwood Beach, that was a previous project that was constructed by the Corps of Engineers, that'll be removed because it'll be replaced by the larger scale project. All right, buried seawall, it's a typical cross section, again with a 17-foot promenade on top, rock structure, basically running from the flood wall contract in Oakwood Beach, and it'll run continuously all the way through, like we said, along the shoreline up through Miller Field. Now some of the heights here, because you are fronting the ocean, we're up to plus 21.4 foot for the top of the seawall, and when you get to the promenade, you're talking you need a couple of feet on top of that at 23.4. So again, the structure, this is going to look, in certain areas, it could be a 12-foot size structure from, when you're standing in front of it. Next slide. All right, and just again, a reminder, that line will run from Oakwood, following this basic outline through Cedar Grove, through Newdorf Beach, and then enter into Miller Field and run to the end of Miller Field. Next slide. All right, reminder, the two tide gates right near Kissam Avenue, because that is where the creek naturally flows in that area, so there will be, but those tide gates are basically to allow the interior areas to let water out. Because you can see what's happening here, we're creating that barrier against the ocean, but the interior, you want to be able to store water and then eventually let it out. The gate chambers on the existing stormwater outfalls, Tyson's Avenue, Ebbets, Newdorf, again, those will only close during storm events to create that blockage, but they'll be open on a regular basis to allow all the interior drainage to come out. There will be an excavated pond east of Kissam Avenue. That's what we call, that's that section B2. It's about 48 acres, and we'll go into a little more detail. But there are open space storage areas in Cedar Grove and Newdorf. You can see them there in B3, B4. That open space, again, it won't be excavated, but it needs to stay open to allow for more storage. All right, this is interior drainage area B. This is the pond that we're going to create right to the east of Kissam Avenue. It's pretty large scale. It's approaching 50 acres, about 125,000 cubic yards. Same concept as the ones in New Creek, same concept as the one in South Beach. Basically dry on a pretty regular basis. replanted and seeded with native wetland vegetation. The idea is to basically, it's there when you need water to be stored, and then eventually it can get out. It will get out through the tide gates on the Oakwood Creek, and there'll also be a connection into the Tyson's Lane existing outfall. All right, so obviously with this new structure running along the shoreline, where right now there is no structure, so we know that there has to be access to get either up and over to do, to either just for access or for maintenance, or to get up on top of the structure. So, you know, sample access ramps, we're still working this out with the state and the city to actually fine-tune the locations of where this will be. But normally, you know, you can estimate that it'll be in Tarleton, right at the treatment plant, Tyson, Ebbets, Newdorf, and in Miller Field, you know, logical locations where you want to be able to access up onto the structure. Also important to note is down by the treatment plant, there is a main sanitary line, so that needs to be accessed at all times. So we'll be constructing a sewer access roadway for the city DEP that you'll be able to basically come off the structure and get onto so that they could always have their maintenance completed. Now the tidal wetlands, this is a special feature in the Oakwood Reach. This is to be constructed actually on the ocean side of the buried seawall. It'll run from Fox Lane, right at the treatment plant, to Tyson's Lane, and it's basically a mix of habitats to upgrade the area. Low and high marsh, tidal creeks, salt marsh, upland dune grasses, and then maritime shrubs and forests. The objective there is to basically environmentally enhance the area, but it also does help offset some of the wave impacts that could occur in this area during a large storm. All right, so the structure, remember, runs from Oakwood Beach all the way into Miller Field. Now, once we enter Miller Field, a couple items to note. We know that the memorial that exists right near Father Capitano area there, that needs to be relocated, and we're in coordination right now with the city and National Park Service for a new location. The existing fire tower that is right in the middle section, that second arrow, the yellow arrow you see there, that is also in line with where the structure has to go, so that fire tower has to be removed. We will complete a full cultural documentation to you know, preserve its history and the importance that it had during its time. And then just in general, there will be cultural mitigation for the viewshed impacts. Basically, this for the usage of this area that it once was. We know that we have to do some mitigation. We are in coordination with National Park Service and the New York State Historic Preservation Office, and we're working on how to do that effort. But that is also part of the project. All right, now we move to contract 6. Just a quick summary again: South Beach, interior ponding; New Creek, interior ponding; the flood wall around the treatment plant; the levee structure and the roller gate up to Highland Boulevard. We just talked about the buried seawall from Oakwood all the way through Miller Field, which has the 17-foot promenade, and the tidal wetlands fronting a big portion of it. Now this is the section from the edge of Miller Field up to the edge of Fort Wadsworth. This is the portion of the project that runs basically where your existing boardwalk is at as of today, and the existing promenade reach. This is a contract that's coming in 2022. Next contract. Next. All right, so buried rock seawall, same structure that you're going to get from Oakwood to Miller Field, except on this portion, instead of the promenade, the 17-foot promenade section, you will get a new boardwalk, 38-foot wide, new access ramps, new stairs to get up and over, just as you do today. And the new thing here is that boardwalk will now run the entire length from the edge of Miller Field all the way to Fort Wadsworth area. Just like in the other reach, the existing outfalls at Greeley, Midland, Norton, Seaview, Quintard, Sand Lane, same concept. Gate chambers will be installed on those to stop water from coming in during a large event, and will be open on a regular basis. The other thing important to note, project this size with the amount of stone and construction that's going on, there's a lot of staging areas that are necessary for the contractor to build the project. So we're working again with the city and the state to identify locations that can be used for the duration of the project. That may very well be some of the older parking lots or some open spaces that we can use, allow the contractor to build a project. All areas that we use during construction will always be restored to existing or better conditions than when we first started. All right, now for the boardwalk section here from Miller Field to Fort Wadsworth, same heights as before, 21.4 for the top of the seawall, top of the boardwalk, 23.4. As a rough approximation here, if you're standing on the boardwalk today, the new boardwalk will be about 6 feet higher than what you stand on today, to give you a sense of scale. All right, now we've been focused on all the other contracts at this point. This is the one that we're starting to really get into now. So that's the design features of the new boardwalk, the new access locations, including ramps and stairs. That's still a work in progress. We know that there are a lot of existing park facilities that are in the area that run along the boardwalk, and we know we need to integrate the new project with that, so we're working that as we speak. Another interesting item, the city does have future stormwater plans for this area, and we're working with the city to do design accommodations. Not that they would build them now, but that once our project is built, they can easily connect and continue to upgrade the interior stormwater efforts within this area. So we're working that out. And like we said, the staging areas that need to be utilized during entire construction, we're working with the state and the city to really pick the locations that we'll use during construction. All right, last one, contract 7. Sorry about that. This is a contract that will come in 2021. This is what we call the Miller Field offset. Again, this does not provide any storm enhancement. Basically, this is to offset the project's impacts to the visitor experience at Miller Field, basically to allow the structure to be built along Miller Field. There is a little bit of a trade-off, so what we will do is create an enhancement of the existing oak forest that's basically in the north right corner of Miller Field next to New York High School. We'll upgrade that, we'll increase the public access to that area, and we're in full coordination with National Park Service to get that contract done. All right, so we kind of broke down all the different contracts, but just to give you a feel of what still needs to be done, we talked about this earlier, the existing utilities, sanitary lines, I mean, there are a ton of lines in this area, and we're working with the city, with DEP, because we need to know where everything is, and that work continues. Obviously, the constructive project is big and this long. There'll be trees that'll have to be removed, so we're working with city parks for tree restitution. Obviously, that'll be part of the project. Construction methodology for the seawall and boardwalk. We still are at the early stages. We don't have an answer just yet about how we foresee constructing that portion of the boardwalk, which entails removal of the existing boardwalk. That's still a work in effort. Again, what we're doing right now is focusing on the design, and then we'll work towards what's the best way to construct this to minimize the impacts to the area and build it as fast as possible. Public access, that's another thing that we're starting to talk about here. Obviously, once the project is under construction, there is an impact to accessing beaches, the boardwalk, the existing boardwalk, park facilities, staging areas. Again, we're all in discussion right now with the city and state to try to organize this so that we try to minimize as much as possible. Just to give you a feel, design packages that we need to do, we go from the 30% design to the 60, to the 90, to the 100, and ultimately the contract advertisement. So there is a lot of effort that goes into all these design pieces. Also, there's a lot of reviews that are required to continue and get to the construction contract. There is value engineering that we do on all of our contracts, trying to maximize savings, find a better way to do construction. There's technical reviews that are required. We have our sponsors, the state and the city, who also provide their review comments. And we actually go to an independent external peer review, where an outside entity looks at our plans, gives us comments. Again, all in the objective of making a better package for construction. And then all this project needs to be built but to be built, you have to acquire a lot of real estate here, and the city is currently making great progress in that that. There are over 700 parcels that are required for this project, and I know the city will give an update on that, but that is a necessary piece, and it has taken some time to get to all those real estate acquisitions. Okay, so mentioned earlier on was the FEMA National Flood Insurance Program. The Corps is coordinating with FEMA on how to proceed here. First steps on our end is that we do need to do an initial risk assessment, and that does evaluate life and economic consequences, hazard curves, failure probabilities, inundation probabilities. The way our rules are, we have to do a certain analysis to make sure that we, the Corps, can certify that the structure can handle the large-scale events. Those results then get shared with FEMA. As a little reminder here, the assessments that we do start in the design phase. They also go through post-construction, but we are in continuing coordination with FEMA. So, like I said, this will advance as we advance our plans and our designs. And once we get closer towards the start of construction, you'll hear a lot more from FEMA as to how we're going to proceed there. All right, the other thing that's important to note for this large-scale project, as big as it is all the structures, the road closure gate, the levee, the flood wall, the tide gates, the buried seawall, they're all currently being designed for potential future sea level rise adaptability. All right, so we're not going to build them to those new heights today, but they'll all be built to be set up so that one day in the future, the entire structure line can be raised by an additional 3 feet if sea level rise really starts to become a concern. So that's another positive here that we'll account for right away. All right, now what's important to always understand when we build projects, obviously once the project's in place, it's going to significantly reduce the interior flooding from a storm such as Sandy. But once the project is there are always going to be low-lying areas in the interior that just have standard runoff flooding in some parts, and that still will continue. I know that needs to be understood. There are still some storms, and this is very important. As big as this project is, there are still some storms that could exceed the design level of this project. Like we talked about, we're designing this to a 300-year. That's 2 feet bigger than the storm during Hurricane Sandy, but there's always a case where there could be a larger storm, so that's why residents have to continue to follow evacuation orders and protocols to help decrease risk to life safety in the event of a severe coastal storm. All right, so kind of running all the way back, kind of re-summarizing where we're at. All right, 2020, the end of 2020, that's the interior area E, that's at South Beach, that's the natural ponding area that will start. In 2021, you'll start to see the bulk of the contracts will start, the flood wall around the treatment plant, the ponding areas in the New Creek area, the levee and road closure gate that runs along Great Hills Park and across Highland Boulevard, and the Oakwood to Miller Field portion of the project, including the interior in Oakwood ponding and the tidal wetlands. And then following in 2022 is the large portion of Midland to Fort Wadsworth, which will include the new boardwalk section. And just for everybody's information, this presentation is going to be available on the Corps of Engineers website, so starting tomorrow you'll be able to get onto that link, or just go to our webpage and you'll be able to see this slide presentation in much more detail. It's www.nan.usace.army.mil.